Edison was born on February 11, 1847, in Milan, Ohio. He was the youngest of 7 children of Samuel and Nancy Edison. His father was an exiled political activist from Canada, while his mother was an accomplished school teacher and a major influence in Edison's early life. An early bout with scarlet fever as well as ear infections left Edison with hearing difficulties in both ears as a child and nearly deaf as an adult. Edison would later recount, with variations on the story, that he lost his hearing due to a train incident in which his ears were injured. But others have tended to discount this as the sole cause of his hearing loss. In 1854, Edison's family moved to Port Huron, Michigan, where he attended public school for a total of 12 weeks. A hyperactive child, prone to distraction, he was deemed difficult by his teacher. His mother quickly pulled him from school and taught him at home. At age 11, he showed a voracious appetite for knowledge, reading. Initially, Edison excelled at his telegraph job because early Morse code was inscribed on a piece of paper, so Edison's partial deafness was no handicap. However, as the technology advanced, receivers were increasingly equipped with a sounding key, enabling telegraphers to read message by the sound of the clicks. This left Edison disadvantaged, with fewer and fewer opportunities for employment. In 1868, Edison returned home to find his beloved mother was falling into mental illness and his father was out of work. The family was almost destitute. Edison realized he needed to take control of his future. Upon the suggestion of a friend, he ventured to Boston, landing a job for the Western Union Company. At the time, Boston was America's center for science and culture, and Edison reveled in it. In his spare time, he designed and patented an electronic voting recorder for quickly tallying votes in the legislature. However, Massachusetts lawmakers were not interested. As they explained, most legislators didn't want votes tallied quickly. They wanted time to change the minds of fellow legislators. In 1871, Edison married 16-year-old Mary Stilwell, who was an employee at one of his businesses. During their 13-year marriage, they had 3 children, Marion, Thomas, and William, who While Edison was not the inventor of the first light bulb, he came up with the technology that helped bring it to the masses. Edison was driven to perfect a commercially practical, efficient incandescent light bulb following English inventor Humphrey Davy's invention of the first early electric arc lamp in the early 1800s. Over the decades following Davy's creation, scientists such as Warren de la Rue, Joseph Wilson Swan, Henry Woodward and Matthew Evans had worked to perfect electric light bulbs or tubes using a vacuum but were unsuccessful in their attempts. After buying Woodward and Evans' patent and making improvements in his design, Edison was granted a patent for his own improved light bulb in 1879. He began to manufacture and market it for widespread use. In January 1880, Edison set out to develop a company that would deliver the electricity to power and light the cities of the world. That same year, Edison founded the Edison Illuminating Company, the first investor-owned electric utility which later became General Electric. In 1881, he left Menlo Park to establish facilities in several cities where electrical systems were being installed. In 1882, the Pearl Street Generating Station provided 110 volts of electrical power to 59 customers in Lower Manhattan. In 1887, Edison built an industrial research laboratory in West Orange, New Jersey, which served as the primary research laboratory for the Edison lighting companies. He spent most of his time there, supervising the development of lighting technology and power systems. He also perfected the phonograph, and developed the motion picture camera and the alkaline storage battery. Over the next few decades, Edison found his role as inventor transitioning to one as industrialist and business manager. The laboratory in West Orange was too large and complex for any one man to completely manage, and Edison found he was not as successful in his new role as he was in his former one. Edison also found that much of the future development and perfection of his inventions was being conducted by university-trained mathematicians and scientists. He worked best in intimate, unstructured environments with a handful of assistants and was outspoken about his disdain for academia and corporate operations. During the 1890s, Edison built a magnetic iron ore processing plant in northern New Jersey that proved to be a commercial failure. Later, he was able to salvage the process into a better method for producing cement. On April 23, 1896, Edison became the first person to project a motion picture, holding the world's first motion picture screening at Coster and Biles Music Hall in New York City. His interest in motion pictures began years earlier, when he and an associate named W.K.L. Dixon developed a kinetoscope, a peephole viewing device. Soon, Edison's West Orange laboratory was creating Edison films. Among the first of these was The Great Train Robbery, released in 1903. As the automobile industry began to grow, Edison worked on developing a suitable storage battery that could power an electric car. Though the gasoline-powered engine eventually prevailed, Edison designed a battery for the self-starter on the Model T for friend and admirer Henry Ford in 1912. The system was used extensively in the auto industry for decades. During World War I, the U.S. government asked Edison to head the Naval Consulting Board, which examined inventions submitted for military use. Edison worked on several projects, including submarine detectors and gun location techniques. However, due to his moral indignation toward violence, he specified that he would work only on defensive weapons, later noting, "I am proud of the fact that I never invented weapons to kill." By the end of the 1920s, Edison was in his 80s. He and his
Thomas Edison was born in Milan, Ohio on February 11, 1847. He didn't learn to talk until he was almost 4 years old. In school, he often daydreamed and was labeled as mentally slow by his teacher. Because of these comments, young Edison's mother took him out of school and homeschooled him. In 1854, his family moved to Port Huron, Michigan. Edison sold candy and newspapers on trains. He became a telegraph operator after saving the daughter of a station agent from an oncoming train. He moved to Louisville, Kentucky in 1866 and became an employee of Western Union.
Thomas Alva Edison. Thomas Edison, also known as Thomas Alva Edison. He was a businessman, an inventor. He was born on February 11, 1847, in Milan, Ohio, United States. His father's name was Samuel Ogden Edison Jr., and mother's name was Nancy Matthews Elliott. Thomas Edison was the youngest of the 7 children of his parents. His father was an exiled political activist, and mother was a teacher. He spent most of his childhood at Port Huron, Michigan. He did not do well in school and ended up being homeschooled by his mother. Interestingly, young Edison received his formal education for just about 12 weeks. Since an early age, he had developed hearing difficulties, which increased with age, and by the middle years, he was almost deaf. Thomas was an enterprising young man, selling vegetables, candy and newspapers on trains. One day he saved a child from a runaway train. The child's father repaid Edison by training him as a telegraph operator. As a telegraph operator, Thomas became interested in communications, which would be the focus of many of his inventions. He moved to New York, where he began his career as an inventor. One of his earliest inventions was a stock ticker. The Golden Stock Telegraph Company offered him $40,000 for the rights of that. In 1869, he patented the electric vote recorder. He then relocated to Newark, New Jersey, where he set up a small laboratory and employed machinist